Hello everyone, Niamh here with some more genealogy stuff. Alright, this is the trying to solve a 100-year-old family mystery. This is part 5 where we're going to go over the I1Z140 project. That's the haplogroup project that I've joined because my dad tested positive for Z140. If you want to see the previous video where I talk about that, I will leave a card pop-up. And we're also going to discuss DNA Painter, which is a cool, interesting tool you can use to help solve some mysteries, and hopefully it'll help us. All right, so let's get started here. All right, so the IZ140 project. And before I pull up the images for the slide, I'm going to cut in a little video of me going over the member list of the I1Z140 project. So enjoy that. All right, so here I am on Family Tree DNA, and I am on the I1Z140 YDNA project site. This page is easily accessible to anyone. I'm actually logged out on Family Tree DNA, so I'm still able to view this. So this is publicly viewable information. So I click DNA results and classic chart. And this is the list of all the members in this project, and it doesn't list their first names, but it lists their last names if they choose to share it, plus the third column is the name of their furthest known male line ancestor. And there's actually 2 pages of this, but I prefer to have everything on the same page, so I'm going to change this to 1,000. And there are actually about just under 800 people in this project right now. So we could be part of this first grouping here, this Swedish person whose furthest ancestor is Franz Gustav Eck, or this Russia group, the Bashkirs from Russia, though unlikely, and all of these groups down to this yellow grouping here. My dad tested negative for that SNP, so he's not part of any of those yellows. He could be part of the orange grouping here, and then again there's more yellows that he's not part of. Here we have there's actually Alexander Hamilton listed as this person's furthest known male line ancestor, and that is the Alexander Hamilton there. So this whole group, yellow group, we're not part of. This section here, the Porters, we could possibly be part of. And in fact, one of them is from Missouri there. And then we have this section, which is obviously the Crawfords. And as you can see, there are other surnames in there, but the majority is Crawford, so that's likely what that grouping is. This top one, Burgess, Robert Burgess, he was also known as Duncan Crawford, so he somehow took on the name Robert Burgess instead of Duncan Crawford, and that is where they got the Burgess name from. And there are 2 other non-Crawford names there. It could be non-paternal events. I have no idea, but that's that. And then this whole section here, all of these pinks and purples and reds, this whole section, this peach section, all of these greens, even further down, we are not part of. These are the big main groups that we've eliminated. And all the way down here to this ungrouped section and this pinky purple section down here, these are kind of a lot of the unknowns. But we're mostly going to be up at the top with this light orange group and the dark orange group and this light tan group. So the top one is the Ek from Sweden, then the Bashkirs from Russia, this unknown W person, then the Hobria from Bulgaria, this whole section of Fairbairns, which are from Scotland, and then down below that is the Miller from Germany, the Guestford from England, this mix of names here in this grouping, and they're from a mix of places as well. And then we have 2 sections here from Italy. Then there's this, the Geronime or Reigns from Germany or Switzerland. Down below that is the Varn and Varns, mostly from Germany, it seems. And then the Weibel from Germany, the Hartmanns from Germany, and the Malichowskis from Poland, and there was a Higgins from England there. And then skipping that yellow group down here, there's a mix of names, but there's two that are Hogan, so it's possibly a Hogan branch, but it could be any of those really. Then, of course, skipping those yellows, and we've got the Porter branch and the Crawford branch. So that's what we've got. All right, so as we saw with that, we have a list of names here. And these are a lot of the ones that my dad sort of fits in. So we go over the potential surnames here, and I didn't list all of the potential surnames because not all of them, you know, there's a big mix. You know, there's groups where it's all the same, so I put those in there. And then there's kind of a mix of groups, and yeah. So the Ek surname is from Sweden. That's that top one. And then we have the Bashkirs from Russia. We're unlikely to be part of that group. I mean, it's possible, but I find it's hard to believe that we would be in that group. And I did search that surname in the area, and or surnames similar to it, and it really didn't amount to anything. That I didn't get much back from that. Then same sort of thing with the Hobria name from Bulgaria. There was only one person on that list that had that name. I don't know if I actually searched that name yet on Ancestry, but again, probably unlikely that we'll be part of that group. Maybe we will be though, so I'll search that name. And then we have the Fairbairns from Scotland, and there were a Fairburn in Scotland, not with the first name Helmer or Elmer, but there were some Fairburns, B-U-R-N, so that's a possibility. Yeah. And then we have the Varn or Varns from Germany. You know, there were several with that name in here. I think I briefly searched that surname, and there were some people with that surname there in the area where my great-grandfather lived, but again, none with the first name, but again, that's a possibility. And we have Hartmann here. That's from Germany. So what I've noticed with the I1Z140 project is there's different groupings, but the Hart part of this name seems to be common in the different groupings, because the leader or the person who runs the group, his surname is Hartley, and there were other Hartleys, and then there were a lot of Hartmans. And the group, there were like 4 of them in the grouping that we could possibly be part of, and then there were a lot of Hartmans or Hart somethings in different groups that we won't belong to. So yeah, so that's it. That seems to be the Hart prefix seems to be a common occurrence in the Z140 haplogroup subclade. So then there's the Hogan/Hamilton. And I kind of put a question mark here because the one person listed Alexander Hamilton as their furthest known male line ancestor, which, they probably, since Alexander Hamilton was a famous person, they're probably going to know his father and his father, etc. But, it's a famous name, so that's probably why they put it down. But there were 2 people with the surname Hogan, so that's why I put that there. And Alexander Hamilton was from Scotland. There was, it was kind of a mix of places, so I just put Scotland there. And then Porter, that could be an English name or it could be something else. It's a pretty common name, but we had that list of Porters, and and they were all from an unknown origin, so I put a question mark there. And there were a lot of Porters around that area, so that's actually a possibility. And then finally the Crawford, the big long list of Crawfords, and most of them were from Scotland. All right, so that is the names, the surnames from that list. It's the ones that are most likely that we'd be part of or had a big long list, like Bashkir, something like that. So, as we saw, there was one Swedish name, and that was Ek. And Ek is a common surname in Sweden, and the translation, it's the Swedish word for oak, like an oak tree. And it's frequently used as a surname. So on that list was the person on that list listed their furthest known male line ancestor as Franz Gustav Ek. And I searched the area, and there was a Helmer Ek in the area, which is awesome. That was big news. So I was actually pretty excited when I found a Helmer Ek. His first name was actually Lawrence, but in some records, he's listed as Helmer Ek or Helmer L. Ek, and then on most records, he's listed as Lawrence Helmer Ek or Lawrence H. Ek. So these two people are, right off the bat, they're probably not connected directly, if they are connected at all. If these people are from the same haplogroup subclade even, that means that their male line is the same. So they could match, but many generations back. And Franz Gustav and his family, they were born, raised, and died in Sweden, so they're not connected. But we have Lawrence being born in 1887, that's right around the time we're thinking of, in McPherson, Kansas. And Franz was born in 1847 in Sweden. So McPherson, Kansas is a little farther away than I would have expected for the potential father to be of my great-grandfather, Vernon Helmer Scott. A little recap, my great-grandfather was adopted. We don't know his birth father, but we have a strong indication that the birth father's first name was possibly Helmer, and he was possibly of Swedish descent. Vernon was born in Lynn County, Missouri, and I mean, we're talking about Kansas here, so it's right next door, but it's quite a ways away. So it's a little farther than I would expect, but right now that's a lead. And so Lawrence's father was Lars, which was anglicized to Lawrence Ek, and his mother was Amelia Anderson, and they were both from Sweden. Franz's mother was Johanna Ek. We don't know his father. Like I said, Franz Gustav Ek was the furthest known male line ancestor of the person on the Z140 list. So Lawrence married Wynne Sharp, who was born in 1891. That's a year older than Edna Hunt, which was my great-grandfather's birth mother. And Franz married Anna Louisa Olsen, born in 1844. So Lawrence and Wynne had one son and one daughter, and Franz had 6 children, and they all lived and died in Sweden. So Lawrence died in 1987. He was a whopping 100 years old, and he had eventually moved to California, though he was still in McPherson, Kansas, around the time that my great-grandfather was born. So we still have that possibility there. And Franz died in 1921 in Sweden. Now, before we go further with this, we can see here that his mother's surname was Ek, Johanna Ek, and his surname is Ek, and we don't know who the father is. Now, if we frequently see a name of a woman her surname is the same as her husband's surname, usually that means that's her married name, and we don't know the maiden name, so people just record down the married name, not knowing the maiden name. And then other times, her maiden name actually is the same as her married name, and that could be for any number of reasons. It could be that they were actually related to each other, or it could be that they were unrelated. I have both instances in my family tree, and varies branches of my tree. So, either is a possibility. Now, if we look at the family tree here for Franz Gustav Eck, I don't have Johanna's siblings listed here, but when I researched Johanna's siblings, all of them have the surname Eck. And I also learned more about the whole story with Johanna and Franz. She was unmarried and had Franz, and when Franz was a young child, she ended up dying. And the speculation, as far as I can gather from the information that people provided, was that it was possible that she had sadly committed suicide. So this was a troubled woman, and Franz was actually raised by his uncle, Johanna's brother. And as far as we can tell, the father was completely unknown. So that means that Franz Gustav Eck got his surname, the Eck surname, from his mother. And that means that the person who listed Franz as his furthest known male line ancestor is kind of in the same predicament we are, because this is essentially an adoption. And so the Eck surname is not actually connected to the Z140 project. And what does that conclude? That means that, Franz Eck got his surname from his mother. Therefore, the Eck surname is not associated with the haplogroup subclade, the male line. Furthermore, Lawrence Helmer Eck is probably completely unconnected to Franz Eck, and is probably not the father of Vernon Helmer Scott. So it's busted, but there we go. And now we have breaking news. This just in. This was very exciting. We've just eliminated another person. So here we are with the Backmans. So I got an email from a descendant of Esther Backman, which was Helmer Backman's sister. A little recap. If I will leave a card pop-up to the video where I detail Helmer Backman, which was one of our leading candidates for the father of Vernon Helmer Scott. And this is actually pretty exciting. I had contacted one of the descendants of Helmer, and she was interested in the story, excited about the discoveries, but not sure that she wanted to take a DNA test. And as far as she knew, none of her family, other descendants of Helmer Backman, had taken a DNA test. So I decided to try to see if I could contact the descendants of one of Helmer's siblings. And his sister Esther had a few children who then had grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So I did contact on Ancestry.com. I found someone on there who was a descendant of Esther Backman, and I contacted them. And I had actually forgotten about that because it was a while ago when I contacted them. And she contacted me and said she confirmed that she is the descendant of Esther Backman, which was really exciting. And then came the news that had me shaking. She said she and her son have already tested with 23andMe, which is where my dad and I tested. So I was I almost screamed. I was like, yes! So I was very excited. I was kind of shaking. And I go to 23andMe, and I look on my dad's account first, and then I look at mine. And sadly, she does not show up on my match list, nor does she show up on my dad's match list. So, I mean, there could be two explanations for that, where we could still be related to her. One is that because she's so far back, maybe we don't have enough DNA to detect, so we could still technically be related. There's just not enough DNA that was passed on that was picked up by 23andMe, so she doesn't show up as our match list. That's certainly a possibility, but I'm leaning toward, we're not related. The other possibility is that she has her settings set to private and decided not to participate in the DNA matches, and that happens a lot. You can choose not to participate in that, and if you don't participate in the DNA matches, then you're not going to show up on other people's lists. So that's certainly a possibility. However, last night she confirmed on her end that we don't show up on her match list. So what does that conclude? Well, it concludes that Helmer Bachman is likely not the father of Vernon Helmer Scott. Busted. I am I'm a little sad about this because Helmer Bachman was the first one that I had found that was such a big contender. So I did have high hopes that Helmer Bachman was the father. But, I mean, I'm also thrilled to find out this information because knowing who the father is not is very helpful information. Of course, I would rather find out immediately who the father is, but knowing who it's not is valuable information. So, yeah. I'm sad, but also really happy to come to this conclusion. So we can take Helmer Bachman off the list as potential father. Like I said, there's still a tiny chance that he could be, but unlikely. That leaves the last big contender, and that is Helmer Lindbergh. So I did try to contact one of the descendants of Helmer Lindbergh, and hopefully she responds to me soon. Yeah, I would love to know because right now that's our big contender. It still could be someone else, but that's what it is. So let's move on to DNA Painter. So this is a really interesting tool that you can use. Basically, you're going over on the DNA comparison with someone on 23andMe or through other, you could do that on Ancestry. Well, actually, I'm not sure if you could do it on Ancestry, but other DNA sites you can go through. And I think you also have the option. Yeah, you could also do it on GEDmatch, etc. So basically, I'm plugging in the where we connect with our matches on 23andMe and GEDmatch in this DNA Painter program. And so how I'm kind of narrowing down whether a match is on my dad's mother's side or whether it's on my dad's father's side is to look at the people who match on his X chromosome. Now, for males, a match on the X chromosome means it is from his mother's side because a male gets his X chromosome from his mother. So if someone matches on his X chromosome, then they are definitely from his mother's side. Now a caveat there is that sure, someone could actually match on both the male side and the female side. It could match on the maternal and paternal side. But if they match on the X chromosome, we can be reasonably sure that that person is on the maternal side. Or, well, it's definitely on the maternal side, but we can be reasonably sure they're not on the paternal side. For females, it means that the match is either on her mother's side or on her father's mother's side, because I got 2 X chromosomes because I'm female. The X chromosome that has the mitochondrial DNA, that X came from my mother's side. She gave me her mitochondrial DNA and her X chromosome. I got that from her. My other X chromosome I got from my father, who got from his mother. That X chromosome doesn't contain mitochondrial DNA, but it does have the X DNA of my father's mother. So that's how you can work that out. So obviously it's easier for males because it's definitely on the mother's side if someone matches on the X chromosome. Now, what I do from there is I compare the overlapping matches with each other. So if they match with the X chromosome, they are likely on the mother's side. And if they don't match with the X match, they are likely on the paternal side. So I'm going to overlay a video of me kind of demonstrating this on DNA Painter, and hopefully it makes sense. Okay, so on DNApainter.com, to create a new profile, just type in the name. I was going to write sample, but I decided to write D.W. Scott. That's my dad. And you will want to select the gender of the sex of the person that your the profile's for, and then start. So then you want to paint a new match, and you go to the 23andMe, and this is my dad's view of me on 23andMe, and obviously we share a lot of DNA because I have 50% of his DNA, so we've got everything there. And so down in the detailed segments, there's this information here. I only grabbed 3 chromosomes, but obviously I'm on all his chromosomes. But all right, and then the next step, you say, I know how this person is connected to me. And you can put their name right there, and then the most common ancestor or ancestors couple, since I'm a descendant of him, you could put self or descendants, because, you know, we're going to be on both sides, so it's not going to be paternal or maternal because I'm his daughter, so I will have both sides. And then you pick a color to, and I like green. Green's my favorite color, and that's to me. So, yeah, and then you can write some notes down in here, like this is my daughter, or an email or whatever. And obviously, I've only put in 3 chromosomes there. But then to edit, you can go over on the side there, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we don't need to see my DNA. This was just to show how to put the DNA on there. So here I have this one person on that's a match to my dad, and I'm specifically picking this person because they connect on the X chromosome. And there we see they connect on the 9th chromosome and on the X chromosome. So this is someone who is from my dad's mother's side, and we don't know who this person is or how they're exactly connected. We just know that this person is on the X chromosome, and I did name this group X chromosome. You could name it anything you want, and since we know it's a maternal side, I chose maternal. And yeah, and then we save that, and now I'm going to put in like 3 other people. And here they are. They've all piled up here on the 9th chromosome. You can see a lot of overlap here. And there's the green is the X chromosome. So that is TG. We also have MM, AD, and BP. I've just abbreviated everyone's names. So then to figure out how they're connected, I have to go back to and choose the X chromosome as the main person that I'm comparing all 3 with. So the 3 segments are this purple, which is actually MM, and the orange and yellow, who are the other 2. And as you can see, the orange and yellow match with the X chromosome person, but the purple one does not, which was MM. So we know that MM is not connected to the X chromosome person, but both of the other 2 people are. So now I want to edit MM, and that was not the way to edit it. You don't want to click edit segment. You want to actually go over to the side and click edit group, and now we can move that to paternal. It's not guaranteed that that person's on the paternal side, but it's more likely. And now I'm moving the other 2 to the maternal side. So there we go. And now we can see we've been able to separate these out. MM is possibly, most likely on the paternal side. The X chromosome with AD and BP are on the maternal side. All right, so that's the end of this video. What's next? So in the next video, we're actually going to look at my my father's DNA and matches. My dad got my grandfather a 23andMe kit for Father's Day. He used the Father's Day deal that they were having and got my grandpa a DNA kit. So hopefully we will be getting some information from that soon. And then I will be doing a part 6. So there might be a few weeks until the next part, partially because we've got to wait on my grandfather's DNA, and partially because I will be out of state for a little bit, spending some time with my mom. So, all right. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.